You won't believe what the maid found in his mansion. And honestly, neither did she. It started on a morning so quiet, even the birds seemed afraid to sing. The air over Banana Island shimmered with that Lagos heat that makes time feel slower, heavier. But inside those marble gates, something was waiting, something that money couldn't bury and silence couldn't hide. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell us in the comments where you are following us from. Amara Okafor arrived clutching her small bag and a folded letter of recommendation like a shield. She had worked in many houses before, but none like this. The Adesina mansion stood proud and white, like a monument to secrets, the kind of place where even the floor looked expensive enough to warn you not to breathe too loud. Chief Tunde Adesina greeted her with a nod that felt more like a command. His smile didn't reach his eyes sharp as broken glass, watching her every move. Behind him, portraits of ancestors lined the hall, their oil-painted faces glowing in the dim light like silent judges. "Your quarters are behind the kitchen," he said. "Stay out of the upper floors. Everything you need is downstairs." Simple words. But something in the tone told her it wasn't advice. It was a warning. As the days passed, Amara learned the rhythm of the house, the clinking of fine china at breakfast, the hum of generators during the afternoon heat, the soft footsteps of Faye, the chief's daughter, wandering the hallways in silence. Yet, even amid that rhythm, there was a space, a pause that didn't fit. Every night after everyone slept, Amara would hear a sound from the top floor, a faint knock, then another. Sometimes what sounded like whispering. The locked room on the third floor, the one the chief had forbidden her to enter, seemed to breathe. And one evening, as she was mopping near the staircase, a cool draft swept past her feet. It came from upstairs. The forbidden door wasn't just locked, it was breathing. Amara froze. The mop slipped from her hand, because from somewhere beyond that door, a voice, soft, broken, and definitely human, whispered her name. "You won't believe what the maid found in his mansion." That whisper echoed in Amara's mind long after she left the staircase, her heart thudding hard as a talking drum. For a moment she tried to tell herself it was the wind, or maybe just her nerves playing tricks after a long day. But the way her name came, stretched and slow, like someone had been waiting too long to be heard, made her hands tremble. She gathered the mop, glancing up to the forbidden floor. All the windows in the hallway were shut tight, but the air felt colder there, heavier. She forced herself to look away, pressing her lips together so she wouldn't call out. "You're here for work, not for stories, Amara." That night in her small room, she hardly slept. Her cot was close enough to the kitchen that she could smell the onions from dinner, but her mind was upstairs, behind that door. Sometimes the house made little creaks and groans, old wood talking to itself, but every so often she heard something that didn't fit. A scuffle, the faintest tap, and that low, urgent whisper. The next morning, the chief sat at the long dining table scanning his phone. He didn't look up when Amara brought him his coffee. Faye, sitting at the far end with her notebook, caught Amara's eye. She waited until the chief stepped out, then rose and slipped quietly toward the stairs. "Madam Faye, you forgot your—" Amara started, but Faye just waved her over, finger pressed to her lips. The two of them walked together in silence, shoes sinking into the thick carpet. When they reached the second landing, Faye finally spoke, voice so low it barely carried. "Did you hear it? Last night, from the third floor." Amara hesitated, searching the younger girl's eyes. There was a hunger there, a need for something, not mischief, not even rebellion, but the hunger of someone tired of secrets. "Sometimes at night," Amara admitted. "It's like somebody is moving around up there." Faye let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "They always say it's nothing, always, since I was a child. But there's something in this house, Amara, something my father won't talk about, and I'm tired of pretending I don't hear it." The words hung between them, heavy as wet laundry. Amara nodded. They were halfway back down the stairs when Chief Adesina's voice cut through the air, hard as a whip. "Faye!" Faye straightened, but her face stayed blank. "Yes, Daddy? I told you before. Stay out of the upper floors, both of you." He looked at Amara now, the warning clear in his glare. Amara lowered her head. "Sorry, sir. We were just—" "Finish your chores, Amara." His voice was flat. "And you, Faye, go to your lessons." He turned and stalked off, but Amara felt his eyes linger, as if he could still see her through the wall. The day dragged by with chores, scrubbing the floor, polishing the silverware, making sure every glass sparkled. In every reflection, window, mirror, polished banister, Amara caught herself looking for something out of place. The house was spotless, but beneath the shine, something was hiding. When night came again, Amara crept from her room, moving quietly through the kitchen so she wouldn't wake Mama Cecilia, the old cook who snored like thunder. She held her slippers in one hand and crept up the stairs, heart pounding in her chest. The hallway outside the forbidden door was darker than the rest of the house. She ran her hand along the wall, searching for the light switch, but found only smooth wallpaper. The silence was thick. She pressed her ear to the door, listening. At first, nothing, just the hum of the air conditioner down the hall. But then a slow scraping, almost like someone dragging their feet across the floor. Then a soft sigh. Amara's courage almost failed her, but she took a deep breath and jiggled the handle just to see. It was locked just as always, but this time her hand brushed something taped under the knob. Her fingers closed around a tiny brass key, old and cool to the touch. She held her breath, every sense alive. Had someone meant for her to find this, or was it a mistake? Down the hall, a door creaked and footsteps echoed. Faye peeking out from her room, a flicker of hope in her eyes. Amara held up the key, and Faye's eyes widened. Together, wordlessly, they moved back to the forbidden door. The key slid in easily. The lock clicked, louder than thunder. The door swung open on silent hinges. A rush of cold air spilled out. The room was dim, lit only by slivers of streetlight cutting through heavy curtains. Dust floated everywhere, shimmering like gold in the faint light. On the far side of the room stood an old wardrobe, its doors hanging open, clothes inside untouched for years. There was a single chair in the center of the floor, an old blanket folded neatly over its back, the smell of lavender soap and something older, like paper or secrets. But it was what lay beside the chair that made Amara freeze. A small, battered music box, the kind with a ballerina inside. Someone had scratched initials into the top. N.A. She remembered the letter, the scent of perfume, the unfinished words. Faye knelt by the box, winding it slowly. The tiny dancer inside spun, music rising into the air, delicate, trembling, almost mournful. Suddenly, from the darkness beyond the wardrobe, a voice, raw and frightened, cried out, "Don't let him take me again!" Both girls jumped back, the music box falling silent. Amara's heart slammed in her chest. She glanced at Faye, who was frozen in shock, then back at the shadowy corner where the voice had come from. There, crouched behind the wardrobe, was a child. A boy, eyes wide and wild, arms wrapped around his knees. Dirt smeared his face, and his hair was tangled and uncut. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Faye's voice came quiet but sure. "Who are you?" The boy just stared, shaking as if words were foreign to him. But when Amara stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. "Please," he whispered, "don't tell him I'm here." In that instant, Amara knew the mansion's secrets ran deeper than she'd ever imagined, and that nothing in her life would ever be the same. Faye pressed herself against the wall, her chest heaving with the shock of what she'd just witnessed. Amara stood frozen, staring at the trembling boy huddled in the shadows behind the wardrobe. For a moment, nothing moved, except the dust swirling in the shafts of light. The boy looked smaller than Faye had expected, no older than 10, with skinny arms and haunted eyes that darted between the two girls as if they might vanish if he blinked. His voice, barely above a whisper, lingered in the air. "Don't tell him I'm here." Amara crouched slowly, palms raised in a gesture of peace. "No one's going to hurt you, okay? I promise." Her own heart was pounding, every sense screaming for her to get away, but something about the boy's fear held her in place. He flinched as she moved closer, but didn't run. Faye gathered her courage and stepped forward, kneeling beside Amara. She searched the boy's face for answers, for any sign of what had happened up here in the darkness of her own house. "What's your name?" she asked gently. The boy didn't answer at first. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand and glanced down at the music box still resting on the floor. The silence stretched on until finally he murmured, "Samuel." Faye's breath caught. She glanced at Amara, who could see the shock flickering behind the girl's eyes. "How did you get here?" Faye asked, her voice almost trembling. Samuel shook his head, staring down at his knees. "He brought me." Faye's hands balled into fists at her sides. The images in her mind started to rearrange themselves. Memories of locked doors, whispered arguments, her father's harsh voice late at night. Amara touched her arm, grounding her. "We're here to help," she said softly. "But you need to tell us what happened. How long have you been here?" The boy looked at them, his eyes wide and empty of trust. "A long time," he said. "Since before Christmas. I used to hear someone singing. Then it stopped." Faye's anger burned hotter, threatening to spill out, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Did my father do this to you?" The words tasted bitter. Samuel didn't reply, but his silence was louder than anything he could have said. From the hallway came the faint echo of a door slamming. Faye's heart jumped. "Quick," she whispered, "come with us." But Samuel shook his head violently, pressing himself back into the shadows. "If he finds me—" The fear in his eyes was so raw, it made Faye's stomach twist. Amara hesitated, then pulled Faye to her feet. "Let's go before someone comes. We can't help him if we get caught." They hurried back into the hall, closing the door behind them as quietly as they could. Faye's mind raced as they slipped down the stairs, barely breathing until they were back in the kitchen. The taste of secrets lingered, sharp as pepper in her mouth. Amara sat down, rubbing her temples, her whole body trembling. "I've never seen fear like that," she whispered. Faye nodded, knuckles white against the edge of the table. "He's just a child. How could my father—" The thought trailed off, too big and monstrous to finish. Mama Cecilia bustled in, arms full of greens for the next day's soup, and shot them a suspicious look. Faye managed to smile and helped with the vegetables, her thoughts swirling like a storm. Later that night, after the house had gone quiet, Faye crept into Amara's tiny room. "We can't leave him there," she whispered fiercely. "No matter what, we have to get him out." Amara looked at her, searching her face for any sign of doubt. "If your father finds out—" Faye cut her off. "I don't care. I'm not a child anymore. I've spent my whole life doing what he wants, pretending not to see the cracks in these walls. But I can't look away this time." The truth in her voice sent a shiver through Amara. Faye sat down on the cot, her legs bouncing with nervous energy. "We need a plan. He needs food, water, blankets, someone to talk to. He can't stay up there alone any longer." Amara nodded, already thinking through the risks. "Tomorrow, when the chief leaves for his meeting, I'll bring him something. You keep watch." Faye squeezed her hand, gratitude and fear flickering in her eyes. "Thank you, Amara, for believing me, for not turning away." "How could I?" Amara replied, her own voice fierce now. "No one deserves to be hidden away like that." They sat together in the hush of midnight, the sounds of Lagos just beyond the window, horns, laughter, a distant hymn drifting from a neighbor's radio. For the first time since her mother disappeared, Faye felt a sense of purpose rising in her chest, a spark of defiance burning hot and bright. No matter what secrets this house held, she would not be silent, not anymore. Sunlight sliced through the kitchen window, catching the motes of flour floating in the air as Amara kneaded dough with a mechanical rhythm. Her mind was upstairs, with Samuel, replaying the boy's haunted eyes and the sharp panic in his voice. Faye was nowhere to be seen, but Amara could feel the pulse of determination in the house, as if both of them were moving beneath the chief's nose, weaving a secret thread. When Chief Adesina left for his business meeting that morning, the energy in the house shifted. Mama Cecilia sang to herself as she chopped peppers, and the security men laughed at something on the radio outside. Faye slipped into the kitchen, a scarf tied around her hair, her expression set. She didn't need to say a word. Amara wiped her hands, slipped a small roll and a bottle of water into a napkin, and tucked it beneath her apron. They moved quietly, careful to keep their movements natural, exchanging glances that said everything. On the third floor, Faye kept watch at the corner as Amara eased the forbidden door open. The room felt colder than ever, and the dust in the air seemed thicker, disturbed by a presence that never left. Samuel was curled on the mattress in the corner, hugging his knees, his eyes lighting up at the sight of food. Amara pressed a finger to her lips and handed him the bundle. He ate in silence, wolfing down the bread, glancing nervously at the wardrobe and the door. Amara crouched beside him, her voice soft. "We'll come back. We won't leave you here." She pressed a small, warm hand to his forehead, smoothing his tangled hair. Faye peeked in, nodded quickly, then gestured for Amara to return. They shut the door behind them, hearts pounding. On their way out, Amara's foot caught on the edge of the ornate Persian rug. She stumbled, and when she looked down, she noticed the corner was folded oddly. Curiosity prickled at her. When she bent to fix it, her fingers brushed something sharp, the edge of a yellowed envelope. It was wedged beneath the rug, half hidden by years of careful cleaning. Amara slid it out, heart thumping. The paper was thick and smelled faintly of old perfume. The handwriting was elegant but rushed, the ink smudged in places as if it had been written in a storm. She glanced down the hallway. Faye was already heading toward the stairs. Amara tucked the envelope into her apron and hurried after her. They ducked into the laundry room, where the hum of the washing machine masked their voices. Amara showed Faye the letter, her eyes wide with questions. Faye's breath caught as she recognized the handwriting. "Is that?" Amara nodded. "I think it's your mother's." Hands shaking, Faye opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. The words jumped from the page, trembling with urgency. "Faye, if you find this, it means something has gone wrong. You must never trust what your father tells you about the third floor. There are things here that should never have happened. I tried to keep you safe, but I fear—" The letter ended abruptly, the last word running off the edge as if the writer had been interrupted. Faye stared at the unfinished sentence, a chill running down her spine. Her mind raced through memories of her mother's gentle hands, the lullabies at night, the sudden change in the house when her mother vanished. Amara's brow furrowed. "She knew. She tried to warn you." Faye's jaw tightened, tears stinging her eyes. "He's been lying to me all these years." Before Amara could comfort her, a heavy footstep sounded outside the laundry room door. Faye stuffed the letter back into the envelope, and Amara quickly hid it in the pocket of her uniform. The door swung open, and Chief Adesina's imposing figure filled the frame. He looked between them, suspicion etched on his face. "What are you two doing here?" "Just fixing the laundry, sir," Amara replied, her voice steady. Faye nodded, turning to the basket of clothes and folding a towel with exaggerated care. The chief's gaze lingered on them for a long, tense moment before he finally nodded and walked away. As soon as the sound of his steps faded, Amara released the breath she'd been holding. Faye pressed a trembling hand to her chest, her eyes bright with fury and pain. "We need to know the rest. If my mother knew about Samuel, about all of it, maybe there's more hidden in this house." Amara squeezed her shoulder, her own anger growing. "We'll find it. We'll find everything he tried to hide." That evening, Faye locked herself in her room, reading the letter over and over, searching for meaning in the half-finished sentences. She stared at her mother's handwriting until her eyes blurred, piecing together memories that suddenly felt sinister. Doors closed in the night, her mother's fearful glances, the way her father's temper always hovered like a storm. Amara, alone in her tiny room, turned the envelope over in her hands. On the back, she spotted another faint mark, an address scribbled quickly, a name she didn't recognize. She jotted it down, heart racing. The letter felt like a life raft tossed in a storm, a piece of truth they'd been denied for too long. Late that night, Faye knocked on Amara's door, the letter clutched to her chest. Her face was pale, but there was steel in her eyes. "We can't stop now. My mother wanted me to know the truth. I'm not afraid of him anymore." Amara nodded, letting her in. "We'll get to the bottom of this. Together." The city hummed outside, Lagos restless and alive beneath the stars. Inside the mansion, secrets pressed against the walls, hungry for light. Faye and Amara sat side by side on the small cot, a battered letter between them, hearts pounding with questions and a new, reckless hope. The sky cracked open before midnight, sending torrents of rain slashing against the mansion's windows. Thunder rolled in heavy waves, shaking the glass and making the lights flicker as if the house itself was shivering. Amara lay on her cot, staring at the ceiling, sleep far from her mind. The letter burned in her memory, its half-written warning leaving a taste of dread on her tongue. Every time the thunder rumbled, she felt the weight of secrets pressing down from above, the kind that didn't let a person rest easy. She sat up when she heard it, the unmistakable creak of footsteps in the hallway. Her heart hammered as she swung her legs over the side of the bed and slipped her feet into slippers. She listened, holding her breath. Another footstep, a door closing. Her hands trembled as she tucked the envelope inside her dress. She peered out into the corridor. The lights were dim, shadows chasing each other along the walls. Faye's door was cracked open just enough for Amara to see her silhouette, illuminated by the blue glow of her phone. Their eyes met. Faye held up the phone, the screen showing the time, 12:14 a.m., then nodded. Rain battered the roof so hard it sounded like 1,000 drummers. They moved silently, not needing words. Amara carried a small bag, bread, water, a scarf she'd found in her drawer, and the letter, now folded and creased from worry. Faye led the way, her feet soft as whispers on the marble. They paused outside the forbidden door, listening. From inside came the faintest sound, a soft whimper. Amara unlocked it, easing the door open. Samuel sat in the corner, hugging his knees to his chest, flinching with every thunderclap. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes at the sight of the two girls. Faye knelt beside him, placing the scarf over his shoulders. "Did you sleep?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the storm. Samuel shook his head, pressing his face into his arms. Amara set down the bread and water. "Eat something, Samuel. You need strength." He reached for the bread with thin fingers, chewing in silence. Lightning flashed, painting the room in white for an instant. The old wardrobe loomed in the corner, its doors hanging open like arms, ready to catch secrets. Amara sat beside him. "Do you remember anything else, Samuel? Anything about your mother or why you're here?" He shook his head, crumbs dusting his lap. "I just remember the night it rained. Like this." His voice was barely more than a whisper. There was shouting. Then I was here, locked away. She used to come sing to me, but then she didn't come anymore. Faye's throat tightened. She exchanged a look with Amara. That hole in the letter, the unfinished warning, pressed on her like a stone. She took Samuel's hand. "We'll keep you safe, I promise." The three of them sat together in the small circle of lamplight, listening to the rain drum the world outside. Faye glanced at the letter again, rereading the address on the back. "There's a name here," she said quietly. "Oluwatoyin. Do you know anyone by that name, Samuel?" He hesitated, then nodded. "She was my mother's friend. She used to visit before everything changed." Amara's mind raced. "That might be our next clue." Footsteps echoed down the hallway, heavy and impatient. Amara's heart leaped into her throat. Faye pulled Samuel behind her, shielding him from the door. The knob rattled. "Faye!" Chief Adesina's voice sharp as a blade. Faye's eyes flashed. "Yes, Daddy? What are you doing up here at this hour?" She stood up, shoulders squared. "I couldn't sleep. The thunder woke me." Chief Adesina's eyes narrowed as he stepped into the doorway. For a moment, his gaze swept over the room, lingering on Amara and the rumpled bed. Samuel pressed himself into the shadows, holding his breath. "You shouldn't be here." Chief Adesina said, voice low and threatening. Both of you, this floor is off limits. Faye, go back to your room. Faye looked him straight in the eye, defiance simmering under her calm. Is that all, Daddy? He seemed taken aback for a moment, but recovered quickly. Yes, Amara, come with me. Amara's blood ran cold. She stood, her knees wobbling, but Faye gave her a reassuring nod. Amara followed the chief down the stairs, her mind racing with panic and the unfinished letter burning in her pocket. In the hallway, Chief Adesina stopped abruptly and turned to her. The lights flickered again, casting strange shadows on his face. Stay away from that room. Don't make me repeat myself. She swallowed, nodding, trying to hide the tremor in her hands. He watched her for a long, hard moment, then disappeared into his study, slamming the door behind him. Amara returned to the kitchen, her heart pounding so loud she was sure the whole house could hear it. Faye slipped in moments later, eyes shining with determination. We can't wait any longer. Tomorrow we find Oluwatoyin. Whatever my father is hiding, it ends now. Outside, the storm raged, thunder and lightning twisting the city's dreams. Inside, the secrets of the mansion pressed tighter, as if the house itself was holding its breath. But Amara and Faye, joined now by the frail hope of a lost boy, felt a new courage blooming, a stubborn refusal to let the darkness win. The next morning dawned thick and grey, rain still streaming in crooked lines down the glass. Amara woke to the sound of the city rumbling awake, a distant call to prayer, a vendor's bell, the occasional splash of tires on the soaked street outside Banana Island's gates. The mansion itself felt heavier, as if the weight of the storm had seeped into its walls. Faye was waiting for her by the kitchen door, arms wrapped tight around her waist. There were dark circles under her eyes, but her posture was resolute. She handed Amara a cup of hot tea, and they drank in silence, nerves humming between them. I found something last night, Faye whispered at last. When my father came up, I saw him drop a key. I picked it up when he left. It's old, not like the rest of the keys in this house. She opened her palm and revealed a small brass key, its teeth worn smooth with age. Amara took it, turning it in her fingers. Maybe it fits that door in the east wing, the one he's always locking before he leaves. They didn't wait long. Chief Adesina left for his office just after breakfast, barking orders at the staff and nearly slamming the gate as he drove out. The moment his car disappeared, Amara and Faye slipped away from the kitchen, moving quickly through the maze of hallways. The air in the east wing felt different, colder, mustier, thick with secrets and dust. At the far end of the corridor, hidden behind a faded oil painting of a river, was a narrow door Amara had always been told was just for storage. She pressed the key into the lock. It stuck for a moment, then turned with a loud metallic click. The hinges groaned as Faye pulled the door open. Stale, chilly air rushed out. Beyond the threshold, a steep stone staircase spiraled down into darkness. The only light came from a weak bulb far below, swinging slightly on its cord. The steps were slick with damp. Amara led the way, hand skimming the wall, counting each step out loud to steady herself. Faye followed, clutching the letter and her phone for a torch. The deeper they went, the stronger the smell of mildew and something sharper, disinfectant, or maybe old fear. At the bottom, the passage opened into a low-ceilinged room lined with iron bars. For a moment, Amara thought she'd stumbled into a forgotten prison. Chains dangled from the wall, some still bearing rusted cuffs. In one corner sat a battered hospital bed, its mattress stripped bare. On a wooden table nearby lay a stack of medical files, dust thick on their covers. Faye's breath caught in her throat. She opened one of the files, flipping through the brittle pages. Inside were medical records, prescriptions, notes written in hurried, cramped handwriting. Patient Samuel Adebayo, she read, voice trembling. Diagnosis, unspecified neurological disorder, recommendations, seclusion, limited contact, ongoing treatment. A cold shudder ran through Amara. They kept him down here, like an animal. Faye gripped the table so tightly her knuckles went white. Why would he do this? Why hide him away? My father! She broke off, anger and confusion warring in her face. They heard a scuffle behind one of the doors along the far wall. Amara crept closer, hand reaching out, her heart pounding. She eased the door open and found a small room, a cell, really. The walls were lined with faded drawings, stick figures, bright suns, and crude houses. A blanket was bundled in the corner, toys scattered around it. Samuel sat on the floor, knees pulled to his chest, rocking back and forth. He looked up when the door opened, fear clouding his eyes, until he saw it was them. Amara knelt beside him, careful not to startle. "It's okay, Samuel. We're here now." He let them come close. Faye sat on the cold concrete, brushing tears from her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I should have known. I should have asked questions. I let him do this to you." Samuel shook his head, but Amara caught the glimmer of hope in his eyes. She turned her attention to the drawings on the wall. Some were newer, others faded to near invisibility. One caught her attention, a picture of a woman in a headscarf, smiling, arm outstretched toward a small child. "Is this your mother?" Samuel nodded, voice small. "She used to visit." Before the shouting, Faye traced the name in the corner, Oluwatoyin. The address from the letter suddenly felt even more urgent. "We have to find her," Faye whispered. "She's the only one left who can tell us the truth." Amara looked around the bleak room, rage and sorrow mixing inside her. "We need to get Samuel out of here. He can't stay in this place another night." Faye nodded, determination settling on her face like armor. She tucked the drawings into her bag, gathered Samuel in her arms, and together they started up the stairs, careful to keep their footsteps light. By the time they reached the kitchen, the rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, falling in gold across the tiled floor. Samuel blinked, shielding his eyes, as if the light itself was something new. Amara squeezed his hand, heart thudding, as she listened for any sound of Chief Adesina's return. The three of them stood together, battered but unbroken, shadows of the basement clinging to their skin. There were answers out there, waiting just beyond the gate. Amara could feel it in her bones, a sense that the storm was only just beginning. "Oh, ChatGPT, DC." Faye sat at the kitchen table, a mug of untouched tea warming her palms as she watched Samuel pick at a slice of bread, still blinking in the sunlight as if he couldn't believe he was allowed to sit outside that damp basement. Amara bustled around the kitchen, her nerves tight as a bowstring, listening for the sound of the front gate or Chief Adesina's voice echoing through the hallway. Every noise made her tense, but Faye's mind was somewhere else, far beyond the polished walls and silent corridors of the house. The stack of Samuel's drawings sat in front of her. She turned them over one by one, pausing on the one with the woman in the headscarf. The name Oluwatoyin glimmered at the edge of her thoughts, tethered to the unfinished words in her mother's letter and the memories she'd tried so hard to bury. The sun through the window warmed her skin, but her heart was cold with the weight of all she was starting to realize. Faye turned to Amara, her voice small but steady. "I need to know what really happened to my mother. The truth, no more lies." Amara nodded, a sadness flickering in her eyes. "We'll go together. We'll find this Oluwatoyin. If your mother trusted her enough to write her name, maybe she holds the answers we need." Samuel looked up from his plate, chewing slowly, watching the two women with a silent trust. Faye leaned over and squeezed his hand, a silent promise passing between them. Then she stood, moving quickly to her father's study. She rifled through his desk drawers, her heart pounding, searching for anything. An address book, an old letter, a slip of paper. At last she found it. A battered envelope with the name Oluwatoyin Bakare scribbled in her mother's familiar looping hand, and a phone number faded with time. Amara stood by the door, watching the hallway, while Faye punched the number into her phone, nerves skittering in her chest. The line rang and rang, just as Faye's hope began to falter. Then a gentle voice answered. "Hello." Faye's breath caught. "Good afternoon. My name is Faye Adesina. I think you knew my mother, Nkechi." A pause, and then the voice, older but warm, said, "Yes, my child. Is everything all right?" Faye's voice shook. Not really. There's so much I don't understand. My mother, she left a letter, and I think she tried to warn me about something. I need to speak with you. Please, it's urgent. Oluwatoyin's voice softened. Of course, dear. Come to my house. I'll be waiting. She gave an address on the mainland, far from the gilded streets of Banana Island. After Amara quickly packed a few things for Samuel and slipped a scarf over his head, they set off, slipping out the back door while Mama Cecilia distracted the guards with her usual fiery gossip. The drive across Lagos was tense, the city's chaos a jolt of normalcy after the cold hush of the mansion. Faye watched the city flash by, street vendors calling, yellow buses honking, the pulse of life beating strong and loud. Oluwatoyin's house was painted blue, with flowers trailing over the fence. She opened the door herself, her eyes kind, her hair streaked with silver. She embraced Faye without hesitation, then looked at Samuel with a sadness that went deeper than words. Inside, over steaming bowls of pepper soup, Faye poured out the truth. Samuel, the basement, the letter, her father's secrets, everything that had festered in the dark for so long. Oluwatoyin listened in silence, tears glimmering as she reached for Faye's hands. Your mother loved you fiercely, Faye. She tried to fight for both of you. She discovered what was happening to Samuel, and when she confronted your father, she paused, pain flickering across her face. He threatened to take everything. She feared for your safety. One night after a terrible argument, Nkechi vanished. Your father claimed she abandoned the family, but she never would have left you by choice. Faye closed her eyes, feeling grief and rage swelling inside her, a storm she could barely contain. So my father, he kept Samuel hidden, and he lied about everything. And my mother, she's gone because of him. Oluwatoyin squeezed her shoulder. Nkechi's heart broke for you and your brother. She tried to protect you from the worst of it. But sometimes, even a mother's love isn't enough to stop a powerful man. Samuel pressed closer to Faye, eyes wide and fearful. She wrapped her arms around him, fierce and protective. Amara watched, tears shining in her own eyes, as Faye finally let herself mourn. Later, as dusk crept over the city, Oluwatoyin gave Faye a battered photo of her mother, cradling a baby on her lap and smiling with a tenderness that pierced right through the shadows. Carry this with you, Faye, and don't let him silence you anymore. Your mother's strength lives in you. That night, as they drove back toward Banana Island, Faye's spirit felt raw but steadier, shaped now by truth and the memory of her mother's fierce love. The road ahead was dangerous. Her father's power reached everywhere, but she was done being silent. Beside her, Samuel slept at last, his head on Amara's shoulder as the lights of the city flickered like distant stars. A pale morning haze lingered over Banana Island as Faye and Amara slipped quietly through the kitchen, Samuel's small hand clutching Amara's sleeve. They hadn't spoken much since returning from Oluwatoyin's house. Something had shifted inside Faye, and Amara could sense it in the set of her jaw, the steady fire in her eyes. Faye had tucked her mother's photograph into her purse, and the weight of it seemed to guide her steps. The mansion was oddly quiet. Mama Cecilia hummed in the pantry, the guards dozed outside, and the usual bustle of the house felt distant, muffled by the secrets that hung thick in the air. Faye glanced around as she moved through the corridor. We can't stay here much longer. My father's going to find out Samuel is gone from the basement. We need help, someone who can really listen. Amara hesitated, then whispered, There's someone you could call. Detective Balogun. Faye frowned, the name tugging at the edge of memory. I've heard that name before. Didn't he? Amara nodded. He was the officer who came when your mother disappeared. He always seemed uncomfortable, like there was more he wanted to say, but couldn't. Faye pulled out her phone, scrolling through old messages until she found a number Mama Ijoma had scribbled on a scrap of paper years ago. Without allowing herself to hesitate, she dialed. The phone rang twice, and then a deep voice answered, rough with sleep. Balogun speaking. Detective, my name is Faye Adesina. I need your help. It's about my mother and something else, something that's been hidden in my house for a long time. There was a pause. Then Balogun's voice softened. I always hoped you'd call me one day, Faye. Are you safe? She looked at Samuel, at Amara. I'm safe, but I don't know for how long. She explained as much as she could. Samuel, the basement, the letter, Oluwatoyin's confirmation of everything her father had hidden. The words spilled out in a rush, heavy and tangled with emotion. I knew something was wrong, Balogun said. I tried to push the investigation, but your father, he has friends everywhere. They took me off the case, made me sign papers, but I never forgot about you or your mother. Can you help us? Balogun didn't hesitate. Meet me at the St. Agnes Chapel in Yaba. Come quickly and be careful, and don't trust anyone who comes asking questions. Faye hung up, her hands trembling. Amara quickly packed a few belongings into a bag. Samuel's blanket, the letter, the photograph, water bottles, some bread from the pantry. They left through the garden, hearts pounding, each glance over their shoulders a silent prayer they wouldn't be stopped. The city felt different once they left the gates, a wild, living thing, pulsing with noise and color. Okadas darted between cars, hawkers shouted over the horns, and the clouds above threatened more rain. Samuel sat between Amara and Faye in the back of a small kiki, clinging to his blanket, eyes wide as the world unfolded around him for the first time in years. The chapel was old and small, its yellow walls faded by sun and time. Inside, Detective Balogun waited, his frame broad and sturdy, his eyes tired but kind. He stood as they entered, taking in the three of them, Amara with her guarded posture, Faye with defiance burning under her grief, Samuel clinging quietly. He didn't waste words. Show me everything. Faye handed him the letter, the photograph, the stack of Samuel's drawings. Balogun read quickly, jaw tightening, as he listened to their story. Your father kept him locked away all these years and no one knew? He threatened my mother, Faye said, her voice unsteady. She tried to fight, but he was always one step ahead. Balogun nodded, silent for a moment. I've seen powerful men do terrible things to keep their reputation intact, but this is monstrous. He reached for his phone. I'm going to make some calls, quiet ones. There are people I trust who owe me favors. We'll need protection and a safe place for you to stay. Amara glanced at Samuel, who sat huddled beside her, eyes scanning the chapel's stained glass windows as sunlight painted colors across his skin. Balogun's voice lowered. I can't promise your father won't try something, but you're not alone anymore, Faye. I'll see this through. I should have done it years ago. A door creaked open. An old priest appeared, nodding gently. You're safe here for now, but word travels fast in this city. If you're running from a man like Chief Adesina, you must be smart and quick. Faye pressed her hand to her chest, where her mother's photograph rested. We're ready for whatever comes. Balogun looked at each of them, at Amara's quiet courage, Samuel's bruised innocence, Faye's stubborn resolve. It takes a kind of bravery most people don't understand, standing up to a man like your father, but I'll stand with you. We'll finish what your mother started. Outside, the bells rang the hour. The city carried on, oblivious, as three hearts waited in the little chapel, ready at last to bring secrets out of the shadows and into the Lagos sun. Oh, ChatGPT, Dise. Samuel sat cross-legged on the cold stone floor of the chapel, the colors from the stained glass window playing across his face. Amara knelt beside him, brushing his hair with careful fingers as Detective Balogun made call after call, his voice low and urgent in the front pew. Faye walked the narrow aisle, mind churning with 100 thoughts. Her father's cruelty, her mother's disappearance, Oluwatoyin's tears, the hollow ache of a home turned inside out by lies. As the sunlight shifted, a feeling of hope began to pierce the fog that had settled around them for so long. Faye watched Samuel clutch his blanket, his eyes following the dust motes swirling above. She knelt before him, placing her hands on his knees. You're safe here, Samuel. No one will lock you away again. I promise. He looked up, his mouth twitching with uncertainty, then nodded. His voice was small, but it carried. Will he come for me? Faye shook her head, squeezing his hands. Detective Balogun won't let that happen, and I won't either. Amara leaned in, her voice gentle. You have us now, Samuel. We'll keep you safe, Balogan finished his calls and returned, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. He crouched down, leveling his gaze with Samuel's. "You're a brave boy. I've arranged for someone from Child Services to meet us, but there's something else you need to know." He glanced at Faye, searching her eyes for permission, then continued. "Samuel, your mother loved you. She tried everything she could to protect you. She left clues, letters, drawings. You were never forgotten." Samuel drew his knees up tighter, his lips trembling. "I miss her." Faye pulled him into her arms. "I do too, every single day." The priest brought tea and biscuits, setting them quietly on a side table. The chapel's old bell chimed, signaling the hour, and outside the city's noise seemed to pause. Balogun stood, straightening his coat. "We can't stay much longer. I have a safe house, small but protected. We'll wait there until we can bring your father to justice." Faye nodded, determination flickering in her tired eyes. She pressed the photograph of her mother into Samuel's hands. "She's with us, right here." He clutched the photo to his chest, not letting go. They moved quickly, slipping through side streets in Balogan's old car, avoiding the main roads, watching for anything out of place. The detective drove with one eye on the mirror, his lips pressed in a thin line. "I know how these men operate. He'll be looking for you." At the safe house, a two-room flat hidden in a noisy neighborhood, Faye helped Samuel settle in. Amara drew the curtains, checked the locks, then sat by the window, heart racing at every sound outside. Balogan paced, phone in hand, making arrangements with Child Services, alerting a few trusted officers who still owed him favors. Night fell, and with it came a heavy silence broken only by the distant rumble of generators and the occasional siren. Faye found herself standing by Samuel's bedside, watching his chest rise and fall as he drifted into uneasy sleep. She turned to Amara, voice hushed. "Do you think we'll ever be free of him?" Amara shook her head, then smiled softly. "We have each other. That's how we start." Balogan joined them, pulling up a chair. "I've been in this business too long to believe every villain gets what he deserves, but I know the truth is out now. That matters." As the night deepened, Samuel stirred, waking from a nightmare. He reached out, fingers searching for something solid. Faye took his hand, humming an old lullaby their mother used to sing, her voice shaky but tender. The boy's eyes drifted closed again, his breath evening out. The next morning came with news. An officer Balogun trusted had delivered papers to the authorities, proof of Samuel's hidden life, the medical records from the basement, the letter from Nkechi, and Oluwatoyin's testimony. It was enough to force an inquiry. Balogun looked at Faye and Amara, pride and worry warring on his face. "This isn't the end. Your father will fight. He'll threaten. But people are listening now. He can't hide you or Samuel or what he's done." Faye stood in the small living room, sunlight warming her back, Samuel at her side. She felt the old fear, but now it was threaded with something new, a kind of stubborn courage that came from surviving what should have broken her. Amara squeezed her shoulder, silent encouragement. Outside, Lagos thrummed and roared, the world moving on. But for the first time, Faye felt like her own life was finally beginning, a life shaped by truth, by family reclaimed, and by the fierce, unbreakable love of a hidden child brought back into the light. Sunrise seeped through the thin curtains of the safe house, brushing Samuel's cheeks with a soft gold that made him blink and squint at the newness of morning. Faye sat on the edge of his bed, watching him wake, marveling at the way the shadows on his face finally seemed to fade. Amara moved quietly around the small kitchen, humming a tune their mother once sang, a lullaby Samuel hadn't heard in years, but now hummed along to with uncertain hope. Detective Balogun had barely slept. He stood by the window, speaking in hushed tones with his contact at the station, giving updates and receiving warnings. "Chief Adesina's lawyers are already making calls," Balogun told Faye, his voice steady but weary. "He's claiming Samuel is mentally unfit, that your mother was unstable, that you—" He shook his head, disgusted. "He'll use every naira, every favor, to keep his secrets buried." But there are people who know now, and there are too many eyes watching. Faye nodded, a quiet flame in her chest. She glanced at Samuel, who sat eating his breakfast, back ramrod straight, clutching the photograph of their mother as if it was a shield against everything dark and loud. Before noon, the knock on the door was soft, almost apologetic. Amara opened it to find Mama Ijoma, her arms full of fresh bread, yams, and a battered suitcase. Her eyes shone with worry and pride. "I heard what you've done, Faye. Your mother would have been proud. The whole neighborhood is talking about truth finally coming out of that big house." Mama Ijoma swept Samuel into a hug, pressing her cheek to his hair. "Don't worry, my son. You are safe now. Nobody can lock you away ever again." She kissed Faye's forehead, her touch full of blessing. Balogun motioned them to the sitting room. He closed the door, his gaze serious. "Today, everything changes. The authorities will arrive at the mansion. Your father will be questioned, and Samuel's existence can't be denied. You can choose to come or stay here." Faye stood, her decision already made. "We'll go. I need to see that house again. I need him to look at me and know he didn't win." Amara stood with her, Mama Ijoma's hand gentle on her back, and Samuel clung to his sister's side, courage flickering in his eyes. They drove through Lagos, the city pulsing with its usual chaos. But to Faye, everything felt strangely quiet, as if the air itself was waiting. Banana Island's iron gates loomed ahead, and for the first time in her life, Faye felt no fear passing through them. At the mansion, police cars lined the driveway. Neighbors stood behind hedges, whispering, some crossing themselves, others watching with open curiosity. The white marble house seemed smaller, stripped of its glamour and silent power. Inside, echoes lingered. Footsteps, whispers, the soft clink of china. Chief Adesina was there, shoulders square, lips pressed tight as the officers read out a warrant and asked questions he could no longer dodge. Faye watched him carefully, searching for regret or shame, but found only anger and fear as he realized the world would not bend for him this time. Samuel hesitated at the threshold, his eyes darting around the grand hallway. Amara knelt beside him, squeezing his hand. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. This house can't hurt you now." Balogun guided Faye and Samuel through each room, collecting documents and belongings. In the third-floor hallway, Faye paused at the forbidden door, its lock hanging open. Sunlight spilled through the windows, dust motes dancing in the beams. The silence felt different now, less like a threat, more like a sigh of relief. She opened the door and led Samuel inside. The room was smaller than she remembered. On the floor, the old music box still sat, lid closed, ballerina waiting to dance. Samuel touched it, wound it up, and let the music play. The notes floated up, filling the empty space with memories of a mother's voice, a sister's promise, and a childhood stolen and finally restored. Faye looked at her brother and saw something settle in his eyes. Not just relief, but the spark of a future that belonged to him at last. She knelt beside him, whispering, "We're home, and this house is ours now, not his." Downstairs, as the police prepared to leave, Mama Ijoma led Amara into the kitchen, where the smell of stew and laughter broke the chill. "Houses are just walls until someone fills them with truth, my dear," she said softly. Amara smiled, feeling the warmth of belonging, of having chosen the right side, and of having protected the children who deserved to be seen. As the afternoon sun settled on Banana Island, the house felt new, its echoes softer, carrying not secrets, but hope. Faye stood in the doorway, Samuel at her side, Amara and Mama Ijoma behind her. She faced the crowd gathered at the gate, no longer afraid of their stares. Detective Balogun watched from the garden, satisfaction tugging at the edge of his tired smile. In the hush after the storm, the mansion was just a house again, a place where love and pain had finally been spoken aloud, and the ghosts of old fears no longer ruled the halls. Faye took a breath, filling her lungs with the scent of rain and new beginnings. Her voice was steady as she spoke to Samuel, to Amara, and maybe to the echoes still clinging to the high, empty ceilings. "We are not afraid, not anymore." And somewhere inside that house of echoes, the past loosened its grip, at last letting them all go. Before you go, if stories like Faye's moved you, don't forget to subscribe and join our family. Every week we bring you powerful journeys that remind us, even in the grandest houses, the real treasures are courage and truth. Tap subscribe so you never miss the next chapter.